The triumph of the desert queen. Have you ever believed in fairy tales, in poetic justice? Because tonight, in the heart of Boston, a woman is about to prove that there is no greater story than real life, and that revenge is a dish best served on a plate of gold. The wedding of the year was shimmering under the crystal chandeliers of the luxurious Somerset Grand Hotel. Champagne glasses clinked in perfect hands. A string quartet filled the ballroom with classical music, and white-gloved waiters glided through the crowd, offering salmon and prosciutto canapes. At the center of it all was Alexander Vaughn. Tall, handsome, and dressed in a designer tuxedo. Tonight, he was not only marrying his stunning new bride, Sophia, a young and dazzling model, but he was also determined to humiliate the one woman he most despised, his ex-wife, Isabella Carson. Just a year ago, Isabella was the discreet wife at his side, expecting his child and praying for a happy family. But when life got difficult and she could no longer hide her struggles, Alexander discarded her like garbage. He divorced her, took the house, emptied the accounts, and left her alone, pregnant with triplets. The rumors around town said she was ruined, helpless, and forgotten. That was exactly what Alexander wanted. That's why, when he sent her an invitation to his lavish wedding, it wasn't out of kindness. It was a hook. He wanted her to walk into the ballroom looking poor and broken so that every guest could laugh. He wanted the world to see the difference between his dazzling success and her supposed misery. "Let her come crawling," he bragged to his friends. "Let them see how far she's fallen. It will make me look even bigger." But Alexander had underestimated Isabella's spirit. The same woman he once mocked for being weak had endured sleepless nights with 3 newborns. She had survived cruel gossip and swallowed every tear until her heart turned to steel. She wasn't planning on crawling into his wedding. If she came, she would walk with her head held high, and she wouldn't arrive alone. The turning point, the night grew tense as rumors spread through the ballroom. Some whispered that Isabella would never dare to show up. Others laughed, imagining she would sneak in through a back door in borrowed clothes. Sophia smiled, confident that her presence would completely crush Isabella. Alexander raised his glass, savoring the triumph of the humiliation he had prepared. Then, the hotel doors swung open. Gasps spread like wildfire through the room. A long limousine had pulled up outside, and from it emerged Isabella Carson, who was no longer the tired, abandoned woman people remembered. She wore an evening gown that glistened under the chandeliers, her hair swept up like a queen, her steps graceful and firm. At her side walked Marcus Sterling, one of the city's most mysterious billionaires, whose presence was commanding and whose hand rested protectively on Isabella's back. And behind them, 3 small children in matching suits and dresses, their eyes wide and innocent. Triplets. Alexander's children. The music faltered. Champagne glasses paused in midair. Whispers turned into a stunned silence. And Alexander's arrogant smile vanished for the very first time. What do you think went through Alexander's mind in that moment? And what do you think he'll do next? Share your theories in the comments. The story before the showdown, before this dazzling, wedding-shattering entrance, Isabella's life had been carved out of shadows and sacrifice. She wasn't born into privilege. She grew up in a quiet neighborhood just outside of Boston, raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. From a young age, Isabella learned to value the simple things: hot meals, second-hand clothes, and the kind of love that isn't measured in diamonds, but in sacrifice. At 22, Isabella believed she had found her fairy tale when she met Alexander Vaughn. He was older, self-assured, a rising entrepreneur with a smooth tongue and an easy smile. To Isabella, he seemed like a savior, He promised her the life she never had, a comfortable home, a family built on stability, and dreams bigger than her world had ever allowed. Against her mother's quiet warnings, Isabella gave him her heart and soon after, her vows. The early days of their marriage felt beautiful. Alexander lavished her with flowers, whispered promises of forever, and swore he adored her innocence. Isabella, believing in love with her whole soul, became the perfect wife. She left her small job to support Alexander's career, ran his household, and cared for his every need. She thought love meant sacrifice. She thought her loyalty would be enough. But as Alexander's wealth and ambition grew, his warmth faded. He no longer saw Isabella as a partner, but as an encumbrance. When Isabella became pregnant, a piece of news that filled her with joy and hope, Alexander's true nature was revealed. Instead of celebrating, he scoffed at her. "You can't even support yourself," he sneered. "How are you going to support 3? Because fate had written its own cruel twist. Isabella was expecting triplets. What should have been a miracle became her greatest burden. The medical bills, the exhaustion, the fear. Isabella faced it all alone. Alexander stopped coming home, stopped answering her calls, and finally kicked her out of their home with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. While he bragged about his success in flashy suits and expensive cars, Isabella was sleeping on a friend's sofa, clutching her swollen belly, whispering promises to the children inside her. "I'll protect you no matter what." The nights were long. Tears became her only lullaby. She took on part-time jobs while heavily pregnant, cleaning offices and folding clothes at laundromats to save every dollar for diapers. Strangers stared, some with pity, others with scorn. Her body ached, her spirit cracked, but she never gave up. Each kick in her belly reminded her that her fight wasn't just for her. It was for 3 small souls who needed her strength. When the babies were born, 2 boys and a girl, Isabella's world changed again. The exhaustion doubled, but so did her courage. She rocked them to sleep while hiding her tears, humming lullabies her own mother had once sung to her. She fed them with trembling hands, sometimes skipping meals so they would have enough. Poverty squeezed hard, but love made her unyielding. The world might have called her a poor, discarded ex-wife. Alexander might have laughed at her misery. But Isabella Carson carried something far stronger than money or status: resilience. It was that resilience, sharpened by pain and polished by sacrifice, that would one day make her entrance into Alexander's wedding not a moment of humiliation, but of triumph. Because the girl he abandoned had become a woman he could never destroy. Do you think a happy ending is possible for her after all she's been through? Tell me in the comments. The night of the wedding, the Somerset Grand Hotel was a palace disguised as a hotel. Its ballroom stretched larger than a football field, adorned with marble pillars and crystal chandeliers. Tonight, every inch was designed not just for celebration, but for spectacle. Alexander Vaughn wanted his wedding to Sophia to scream wealth, power, and triumph. He wanted every guest to know he had reached the top, leaving his regrettable past and his ex-wife far behind. Gold-edged invitations had been sent weeks earlier to the city's elite: investors, politicians, celebrities, and business moguls. The event had been featured in lifestyle magazines, billed as the union of the season. Reporters swarmed outside, their cameras ready to capture every luxurious detail. Limousines lined the entrance, delivering guests in couture gowns and tuxedos that cost more than a year's rent for a regular family. Inside, the air was buzzing with shallow laughter and champagne toasts. White-gloved waiters circulated with trays of oysters and lobster tails, while a string quartet filled the air with Mozart. At the front of the ballroom, Alexander wore the smug grin of a man who believed he had won at life, his arm proudly over Sophia. She was a vision in her designer gown, with shimmering diamonds and arrogant confidence. Sophia, 24 years old, reveled in the attention. She had once been a minor model struggling for recognition. Now, she was at a wealthy groom's side at a $1 million wedding. She leaned into Alexander, whispering sweet nothings and smiling as if the ballroom were her personal stage. The cameras loved it, and she loved every flash. She didn't care that whispers about Alexander's ex-wife persisted in the corners. In fact, she hoped Isabella would come. Sophia yearned to watch her rival crumble in public. Alexander's groomsmen clapped him on the back, congratulating him on his upgrade. Guests raised their glasses, not just to celebrate love, but to cement alliances and secure future business. In this glittering room, everything had a price. Love, loyalty, even dignity. And Alexander reveled in it. He raised his champagne flute and declared, "Tonight, I leave the past behind. Only success awaits me." But the truth was, Alexander hadn't invited Isabella just to brag about his new life. He wanted a spectacle. He wanted to prove that while he soared, she had sunk. He wanted her presence to serve as a living reminder of his superiority. Some guests, aware of the bitter divorce, chuckled at the idea of Isabella arriving in a second-hand dress, perhaps looking frail, tired, and broken. "She'll probably come to beg," Alexander had joked that evening, "and we'll all laugh." The orchestra swelled as the ceremony prepared to begin. The officiant was ready. The floral arrangements perfumed the air, and the ballroom was filled with anticipation. Yet, beneath the glamour, a silent tension was building. Everyone wondered, would Isabella come? At the grand entrance, a sudden hush spread through the crowd. An usher rushed in, whispering something to the maitre d'. The music stopped. Heads turned toward the golden doors, waiting, wondering. Alexander's arrogant smile tightened, convinced his trap was about to be sprung. Sophia's grin widened, eager for the show. Guests leaned forward, curious and eager for drama. None of them knew that the woman about to walk through those doors would not be the broken, pathetic ex-wife they expected. She would be the storm that would shatter their perfect illusion. What would you do if you were in Sophia's shoes right now? What about Isabella's? Comment below. The revelation of a villain. Alexander Vaughn had perfected the art of deception. To the guests in the ballroom, he seemed like the ideal groom. Charming, successful, a man who had climbed the ladder of wealth and claimed the ultimate prize, a young and glamorous wife. But beneath the tuxedo and the practiced smile, a man whose ambition had always been fueled by cruelty was lurking. Alexander's path to success wasn't paved with hard work alone. It was carved with betrayal, shortcuts, and broken promises. When he married Isabella years ago, he had little more than a modest salary and big dreams. Isabella's quiet devotion and willingness to sacrifice gave him stability. But as soon as his career began to take off, Alexander started to see her as a liability. He complained about her simple appearance, scoffed at her for not measuring up to the wives of his wealthy colleagues, and belittled every effort she made to hold the family together. When Isabella revealed she was expecting triplets, Alexander's mask cracked completely. Instead of joy, his eyes filled with calculation. 3 children meant more expenses, more responsibility, less freedom to chase wealth and pleasure. "You've ruined my life," he spat one night, storming out the door as she wept on the floor. From then on, his visits home became less frequent. His excuses grew more outlandish. until, finally, he cast her out of their home with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. To him, Isabella was just a chapter he wanted to erase, and so Sophia entered, the dazzling replacement. Sophia was everything Isabella was not, at least in Alexander's eyes. She was young, glamorous, and came from a wealthy circle. To the public, she was a rising model, often photographed at fashion events with champagne in hand. But behind the makeup and designer dresses was a woman as calculating as Alexander himself. She saw in him not love, but an opportunity. With Alexander, she could secure the lifestyle she craved. The diamonds, the yachts, the parties at mansions. It was Sophia who encouraged Alexander to show off his new life, who scoffed at the very mention of Isabella. "Invite her," she whispered when wedding plans began. "Let her see what she lost. Let everyone see what you gained." Her cruelty wasn't just to prove her superiority. It was to crush any threat to her new position as Mrs. Vaughn. Together, Alexander and Sophia were a perfect storm of arrogance and greed. They fed on each other's vanity, blind to the whispers around them. Some guests admired their audacity. Others shook their heads, sensing disaster. But neither Alexander nor Sophia cared. They believed they were untouchable, above judgment, destined for a life of endless indulgence. As Alexander paraded Sophia around the ballroom, his laughter rang hollow. But his pride swelled with every envious glance. He reveled in the idea of Isabella walking in, pale and frail, confirming to the world that he had upgraded. Sophia clung to his arm, her diamond bracelet catching the light, her eyes sparkling with cruel anticipation. They believed they had scripted the perfect play. Isabella as the tragic figure, Alexander as the triumphant groom, Sophia as the dazzling prize. But the story they tried to write was about to collapse, because the woman they had scorned as weak had been transformed. And the empire they bragged about was built on sand, waiting for the tide to wash it all away. And tonight, the tide was coming. Do you think this couple deserves their downfall? Or that their cruelty has an explanation? Leave me your opinions. The wheels of justice turned. The plan to humiliate Isabella wasn't born from Alexander's arrogance alone. It was carefully crafted, whispered in late-night conversations between him and Sophia. While florists arranged roses and planners rehearsed the timing of the ceremony, Alexander and Sophia schemed their cruelty behind closed doors. "Are you sure she'll come?" Sophia asked one night as they relaxed in their penthouse. She sipped champagne, her diamond ring gleaming in the city lights. "She'll come," Alexander answered confidently. "Isabella's too proud to ignore the invitation, and even if she doesn't want to, curiosity will eat at her from the inside. She'll want to see me, see what she lost." Sophia smiled. "Good, because when she walks through those doors, she'll realize she doesn't belong here, and everyone else will realize it too." In their heads, they rehearsed the moment. Alexander imagined Isabella walking in, wearing something outdated, perhaps clutching a handbag she bought from a discount store. He pictured her standing awkwardly on the edge of the ballroom, while photographers took pictures of him with Sophia in her shining gown. It would be perfect, a silent comparison that would paint Isabella as pathetic and Sophia as victorious. But Sophia wanted more than just a comparison. She wanted destruction. "Let's make sure the press notices her," she suggested. "I'll tell the photographers where to look. We'll smile for the cameras while she's standing right there, invisible next to us. She'll look like a ghost from your past, haunting your success." Alexander loved the idea. "And after the vows, I'll make a toast," he added. "Something subtle, thanking everyone who supported me when others couldn't." Everyone would know he was talking about her. They'll laugh behind their champagne glasses and she'll crumble. Their cruelty deepened with every word. Sophia laughed, imagining Isabella's tears. Alexander smiled, savoring the idea of his ex-wife cringing under the weight of his triumph. For them, the wedding wasn't about love. It was about power, about proving they had won, and Isabella had lost. Even the seating arrangements reflected their malice. Alexander instructed the planner to keep a chair empty near the back, just in case the ex-wife shows up. He told the catering service to take note too. Sophia, with a malicious glint in her eyes, made sure the table closest to that chair was filled with gossip-hungry socialites who would waste no time in spreading rumors. By the morning of the wedding, the plan was in motion. Alexander stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his cufflinks, smiling at his reflection. "Tonight," he said to himself, "I erase her completely." Sophia, slipping into her gown, whispered, "And tonight I become the only Mrs. Vaughn anyone will ever remember." Neither of them imagined that their stage, polished with gold and champagne, was about to collapse under the weight of the truth. Because Isabella wasn't walking into their trap as the broken woman they expected. She was walking in with a strength they had never seen, and with allies powerful enough to turn their cruel plan into their final undoing. The trap they set for Isabella was about to close, but not on her, on them. Marcus's vengeance. The night before Alexander's wedding, Isabella sat on the edge of a worn sofa in her small apartment, her head in her hands. The room was dimly lit by a single lamp, its flickering bulb casting long shadows on the peeling wallpaper. Around her, toys were scattered on the floor, half-empty baby bottles on the counter, and the faint cries of her triplets drifted from the bedroom. She rocked slowly, exhaustion weighing on her bones. Life had not been kind since Alexander had cast her out. She had managed, piecing together part-time jobs just to keep food on the table. She cleaned offices at night, folded clothes at laundromats by day, and babysat neighbors' kids whenever she could. Her hands were raw from cleaning products, her back ached from long shifts, and her eyes burned from sleepless nights. The world seemed eager to remind her of her failure. Former friends avoided her calls, whispering that she had married above her station and gotten what she deserved. Strangers looked at her stomach, and then her baby stroller, with judgment in their eyes. 3 kids, no husband, no money. Even at the grocery store, she felt the sting of pity when she used food stamps to buy formula. That night, as she tucked her children into bed, she couldn't stop the tears from rolling down her cheeks. "I promise you, my babies," she whispered, brushing the soft hair from their foreheads. "I won't let you grow up thinking you aren't wanted. Even if I have to break myself, I will never let you feel abandoned." But on the inside, she was breaking. The invitation to Alexander's wedding lay on the kitchen table, its golden border glistening mockingly in the dim light. She had almost thrown it away the day it arrived. Yet there it was, a cruel reminder that while she struggled to survive, Alexander was living in luxury, celebrating with crystal chandeliers and champagne. She knew the invitation wasn't out of courtesy. It was about cruelty. He wanted her there. He wanted her humiliated. She clutched the card to her chest and sobbed, torn between fury and desperation. A part of her wanted to burn it, to deny him the satisfaction. But another part, deeper and stronger, whispered that she couldn't run forever. She had spent too long hiding, too long cringing from the world's judgment. Maybe it was time to face it, no matter how painful it was. Still, fear held her in its grip. She imagined walking into that ballroom in her simple dress, clutching her children, every pair of eyes judging, every laugh piercing her like a knife. She pictured Alexander's grin, Sophia's cruel smile, the guests whispering, "There's the poor ex-wife. Look how low she's fallen." Her heart ached with shame. She wasn't sure she could endure it. That night, as the rain beat against her window, Isabella curled up on the sofa and let the weight of her life crush her. She cried until her throat burned, until exhaustion dragged her into a fitful sleep. In her dreams, she saw Alexander's face, sneering, telling her she was nothing. She saw Sophia laughing, draped in jewels, and she saw herself, alone, broken, invisible. Isabella didn't know it yet, but the storm she felt inside was the same fire that would soon lead her into the ballroom, not as a victim, but as a force that neither Alexander nor Sophia could ever silence. Because hitting rock bottom wasn't her end, it was the beginning of her rise. How do you think a name change in this story would affect your perception of it? Share with us. A new ally. The morning light filtered weakly through the thin curtains of Isabella's apartment, highlighting the exhaustion etched onto her face. She had barely slept, her mind drifting between the fear of humiliation and the silent rage that burned in her chest. Her triplets stirred in their cribs, tiny hands reaching out, reminding her of the only reason she kept going. She leaned in to kiss each one of them, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. A knock on the door startled her. She hesitated, clutching her worn sweater. Visitors were rare. When she opened the door, she froze. Standing in the hallway was Marcus Sterling. Isabella knew of him. Everyone in the city did. He was the elusive billionaire entrepreneur who rarely appeared in public outside of charity events. Tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes that carried the weight of too many storms, Marcus was a figure admired and feared. She had seen his name in the papers tied to powerful deals and donations to hospitals, but she never expected him to be at her door. "Isabella Carson." His voice was quiet and firm. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Confused, she nodded. "Yes, that's me, but why are you here?" He glanced around, at the modest apartment, the toys, the crib, the evidence of her struggle. For a moment, his jaw tightened. Then he looked her in the eyes. "Because I know what he did to you, and because I've seen this story before." Isabella stiffened, suspicion mounting. "If Alexander sent you..." "Alexander didn't send me," Marcus interrupted firmly. "I'm here because I watched my own mother go through what you're living now. My father left her for another woman when she was sick. She died of cancer. Alone. Years later, my wife..." His voice faltered for a second before he forced himself to continue. "My wife also battled cancer. I did everything I could, but I still lost her. I know what it is to watch someone you love suffer because of cruelty and betrayal, and I swore I'd never stand by if I saw it happen again." Isabella's breath caught in her throat. The roughness in his voice wasn't pity. It was pain, carved deep by his own scars. "I don't want your charity," she whispered, ashamed of the tremble in her tone. Marcus shook his head. "This isn't charity. This is justice. Alexander thinks he can flaunt his cruelty without consequences. He's wrong. You don't have to fight him alone." She looked at him, her heart torn between disbelief and a fragile hope she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Why would a man like him, with all his wealth and power, care about her? But when she looked into his eyes, she saw no judgment, no mockery, only recognition, as if her pain mirrored his. "I can't go to that wedding," Isabella said, her voice breaking. "Not like this. Not when he wants me to crumble." "Then don't go as his victim," Marcus responded softly. "Go as the woman he underestimated. I'll make sure of it." The promise in his voice was unbreakable. For the first time in years, Isabella felt the weakest spark of strength return to her chest. What she didn't yet realize was that this man, broken by his own losses, rebuilt by compassion, was about to turn Alexander's cruel stage into the battlefield of his undoing. and Marcus Sterling never walked into a battle he couldn't win. What's the best hook you've ever heard in a story? Share it with us. The arrival of a queen, the days leading up to Alexander's wedding blurred for Isabella. Between caring for her triplets and battling the doubts that plagued her, she wondered if she had made a mistake, even considering Marcus's offer. Every time she looked at the invitation on her table, she felt the weight of Alexander's cruelty. He wanted her humiliated. He wanted her broken. But Marcus Sterling wasn't a man who made empty promises. The morning of the wedding, a sleek black limousine waited outside her apartment. Isabella watched from the window in disbelief, clutching her children. Neighbors peered from their doorways, whispering in shock. For the first time in years, she wasn't leaving the house with a stroller and worry lines. She was stepping into something extraordinary. "Isabella," Marcus said, offering her his hand as he approached. "Today isn't about him. It's about you reclaiming your dignity. Let me help you show the world who you really are." Inside the limousine, the leather seats gleamed. Soft music filled the air, and a stylist was waiting with racks of dresses. "This is too much! I can't!" Isabella exclaimed. Marcus shook his head. "You've given up enough already. Let me give something back to you." The stylist guided her through the dresses, each one more stunning than the last. At first, Isabella hesitated, her fingers trembling as she touched the silks and satins. But when she slipped into a dark sapphire gown, the room seemed to shift. The fabric hugged her figure, the color lit up her eyes. And for the first time in years, she didn't see a tired mother in the mirror. She saw a woman reborn. Her children, dressed in tiny tuxedo suits and a matching dress, clapped with innocent delight. "Mama, you look like a princess," one of the children squealed, his voice pure with pride. Tears welled up in Isabella's eyes as she hugged them. They had only ever seen her in worn clothes and tired smiles. Tonight, they saw her strength shine. Makeup erased the shadows of sleepless nights. Soft curls framed her face. A diamond necklace, a discreet gift from Marcus, rested on her collarbone, catching the light. She touched it nervously, but he simply said, "Consider it armor." As the limousine rolled toward the Somerset Grand Hotel, Isabella's nerves were a jumble. She imagined Alexander's smirk, Sophia's laugh, the whispers of the crowd. Her palms grew slick with fear. Marcus noticed. "Do you know what makes a storm powerful, Isabella?" he asked quietly. She looked at him, perplexed. "It doesn't ask for permission. It just arrives. Tonight, you are that storm." She exhaled. A shaky laugh escaped her lips. For years, she had been shrinking, hiding, trying to survive. But tonight, she wouldn't hide. Tonight, she would walk into the ballroom, not as Alexander's discarded ex-wife, but as the woman he never knew. The limousine pulled up to the hotel's glittering entrance. Photographers swarmed outside, their cameras flashing at every arriving guest. The moment the doors opened, the crowd gasped. Isabella stepped out, radiant, her children following her like royal heirs. Marcus was by her side, exuding a silent power. For the first time in years, the world wasn't laughing at her. It was in awe. And inside, Alexander's perfect stage was about to become his greatest humiliation. If you're loving this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible content. The beginning of the end, the Somerset Grand Hotel was a kingdom of gold that night. Guests swirled through the ballroom in gowns and tuxedos. Their laughter echoed under crystal chandeliers. The string quartet played a delicate melody, while champagne flowed like water. For the elite gathered there, the night was a showcase of wealth and power. But within minutes, it would become something far more unforgettable. The golden entrance doors opened slowly, almost ceremoniously, and the first sound that broke the music was the collective gasp of the crowd. Outside, a sleek black limousine had pulled up, its polished body reflecting the spotlights and camera flashes. Photographers rushed forward, their shouts rising above the music. "Who is it? Who's arriving now?" And then she stepped out. Isabella Carson, who was no longer the tired mother silently struggling, who was no longer the discarded ex-wife Alexander believed she would always be. Tonight, she was a vision. Her sapphire gown shimmered with every step. Her hair fell in soft curls, and her diamond necklace caught the light like a crown jewel. She stood with a straight back, her chin up, her eyes quiet yet fierce. She moved with the grace of a queen who had nothing left to fear. Murmurs grew louder. "Is that her? Alexander's ex-wife? She looks incredible. I thought she was struggling." But Isabella wasn't alone. At her side walked Marcus Sterling, the enigmatic billionaire whose mere presence could silence a room. His dark suit was tailored to perfection. His hand rested gently, yet protectively, on Isabella's back. The sight of him escorting her sent shockwaves through the ballroom. Guests leaned in to whisper frantically, "Why is she with him? Marcus never brings anyone to these events. What does this mean?" And then, the final blow. 3 small figures emerged from the limousine. Isabella's triplets, dressed in tiny tuxedo suits and a sparkling dress, their eyes wide, reflecting innocence and pride. They clung to their mother's hands, oblivious to the chaos their presence caused. The gasps turned to a stunned silence. Whispers hissed through the ballroom like wildfire. "They're his children. They look just like Alexander. My God, he abandoned them?" Inside the ballroom, Alexander's confident smile froze on his lips. His champagne glass trembled slightly in his hand. For weeks he had bragged about the humiliation Isabella would inflict on herself if she dared to show up. But as he watched her glide into the ballroom with a billionaire at her side and 3 living reminders of his betrayal, the humiliation was his. Sophia's face hardened. Her painted smile cracked at the edges. She clung to Alexander's arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. "What is she doing here, and with him?" she hissed. The orchestra faltered, missing notes as every musician turned their eyes to the entrance. The ballroom, moments ago filled with laughter and vanity, had become a stage of suspense. Every eye followed Isabella as she stepped onto the polished marble floor, her heels clicking to the rhythm of the hearts beating around her. Isabella didn't rush. She didn't cower. She moved with a steady confidence, her gaze fixed forward, ignoring the whispers, ignoring Alexander's pale face. She wasn't here to be his victim. She was here to reclaim her dignity. And as the doors closed behind her, sealing the silence, one truth became clear to everyone in that glittering room. The woman they expected to pity had arrived as the only one they could admire. What character in this story has surprised you the most so far? Let me know in the comments. The moment of truth. The silence in the ballroom stretched like glass about to shatter. Isabella stood tall in her sapphire gown, Marcus at her side, the triplets clinging to their hands. Whispers grew louder, a storm of curiosity and scandal. Alexander felt every pair of eyes shift from him and Sophia to the woman he had hoped to bury in shame. Rage burned in his chest. This was not the scene he had planned. She was supposed to look small, weak, and desperate. Instead, she had stolen the spotlight. His pride demanded action. He stepped forward, forcing a smirk on his face, raising his champagne glass. "Well, well," he said, his voice echoing on the marble floor. "Look who decided to show up. My ex-wife. What? Sentimental?" The crowd shifted uncomfortably. His tone dripped with venom disguised as charm. Sophia squeezed his arm, smiling, encouraging him. Alexander circled closer, like a predator. Tell me, Isabella, did you borrow that dress? Or did Mr. Sterling here buy it for you? Must feel strange, don't it? Walking into a place like this after living in, what was it? A rundown apartment? Laughter bubbled at the edges of the crowd. Hesitant, unsure. Isabella's heart hammered in her chest, but she refused to look down. She opened her mouth to reply, but Marcus's firm hand on her back stopped her. His calm said, "Not yet." Alexander wasn't finished. He leaned closer, his voice sharper now. "And bringing the children? My goodness, Isabella, was it for pity? Or did you hope someone here would take pity on you and write you a check?" A ripple of gasps spread among the guests. The cruelty of his words cut deep, echoing throughout the ballroom. The triplets clung to Isabella tighter, feeling the tension. For a moment, Isabella felt the old shame return, the familiar sting of his mockery. But then she caught Marcus's eyes, steady, unwavering, and remembered that she wasn't alone. Before she could speak, Marcus stepped forward. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of authority that silenced the entire room. "You talk of pity, Mr. Vaughn." His gaze was unyielding. "But what I see before me is not a woman to be pitied. I see a woman who has endured more than you could ever endure, and she has done so with dignity." Alexander's smirk faltered, but he forced a laugh. "And who are you to lecture me?" Marcus's lips curled into a cold smile. "I'm the man who stands by her side when you chose to walk away. I'm the man who sees her worth while you discarded it. And I'm the man who will make sure the world knows the truth about the kind of husband you were." The room erupted in whispers. Sophia went pale, sensing the shift. Alexander's mask cracked, rage glinting in his face. "This is my wedding," he snarled. "You don't belong here." Isabella finally stepped forward, her voice firm and clear. "No, Alexander, you're wrong. I belong here more than you know, because while you celebrate your new life, you can never erase me, or the children you abandoned. We are living proof of the man you really are." Gasps filled the room. Guests turned, their eyes now sharp with judgment. Alexander opened his mouth to retort, but no words came out. For the first time, he was the one left speechless. And in that silence, his carefully constructed empire of lies began to crack. Do you believe the truth always comes out? Comment if you believe in karma. The fall. The ballroom was buzzing with restless whispers, the air thick with tension. Isabella's words had struck like lightning, but it was Marcus who now commanded the storm. Standing tall, his presence radiated a silent authority. Every gaze was fixed on him. Alexander's jaw was clenched. "Enough!" he snapped, his voice trembling with anger. "This circus ends now. Security!" But Marcus held up a hand, silencing him with effortless ease. "Before you try to have her thrown out, Mr. Vaughn," he said calmly, "perhaps you should be worried about what I've brought with me tonight." The crowd stirred, curiosity igniting like wildfire. Guests craned their necks, hungry for drama. Even the orchestra had fallen silent, their bows frozen in midair. Alexander forced a laugh. "And what exactly have you brought? Pity? Empty speeches? This is my night, Sterling, not yours." Marcus's gaze sharpened, his tone flat but lethal. "What I have," he said, reaching into his jacket pocket, "is the truth." He pulled out a slim black folder and placed it on the nearest table. The silence in the room deepened. With deliberate calm, he opened it, revealing neatly stacked documents. "These are," Marcus announced, his voice echoing through the ballroom, "are financial records. Records that prove Alexander Vaughn has been embezzling funds from his company for over 2 years. Gasps erupted. Glasses clattered against marble as guests exchanged looks of astonishment. A few pulled out their phones, already texting, hungry for the scandal. Alexander's face went pale. "Lies!" he shrieked. "They're fabricated! He's trying to slander me!" But Marcus was relentless. Not fabricated, verified. Wire transfers routed through offshore accounts, shell corporations that mask losses, and stolen funds funneled into your personal lifestyle. Vacations, cars, even this wedding. He paused, his eyes locked on Alexander's. "You invited Isabella here to humiliate her. Instead, you invited her to witness your undoing." Sophia clutched Alexander's arm, panic flickering in her eyes. "Alexander, is it true?" she whispered. "Of course not," he roared, pulling away from her. "He's bluffing!" Marcus leaned forward, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Bluffing? Then why, Alexander, do I have signed correspondence between you and your accountant? Why do I have recordings of your phone calls authorizing these transfers?" The room exploded in whispers again. Investors shifted uncomfortably, their expressions hardening. Politicians slid toward the exits, eager to distance themselves. Even Alexander's closest friends backed away, not wanting to be tainted by association. Isabella stood still, her heart pounding. For years she had dreamed of Alexander facing consequences, of the world finally seeing the cruelty she had endured. And now, in this glittering ballroom, justice was unfolding before her eyes. Alexander's mask shattered completely. Sweat beaded his forehead. His voice rose in desperation. "This is a setup," he shrieked. "He's trying to ruin me. You all know me. I built my empire with hard work." But no one believed him anymore. His voice, once commanding, sounded hollow, desperate, pathetic. Marcus straightened, closing the folder with a quiet finality. "Hard work doesn't leave a trail of stolen millions, Mr. Vaughn. Your empire is built on lies. And tonight, those lies end." For a moment, the ballroom was silent, the weight of the truth falling like a hammer. Then, a guest near the front murmured, just loud enough for others to hear, "He's finished." And just like that, the tide turned. The man who had orchestrated a night of humiliation for his ex-wife now found himself exposed, trembling, his empire crumbling before the very people he sought to impress. And everyone in that glittering room knew they were no longer watching a wedding. They were watching a downfall. Do you think money can buy everything? Tell me what you think of this twist. The aftermath. The ballroom was swirling with chaos. Whispers turned to accusations. Eyes that once admired now glittered with disgust. Alexander Vaughn, who only minutes ago was at the height of his empire, was crumbling in front of the very audience he had sought to impress. And at his side, Sophia, his bride, felt her perfect world begin to collapse. At first she stayed frozen, clutching his arm as if his strength could still protect her. But as Marcus's words sank in and the document spread like wildfire, the truth became undeniable. The empire she thought she was marrying into was nothing but stolen wealth, a house of cards shaking in the wind. Her grip slackened. Her eyes flickered nervously from guest to guest, reading their judgment, their disdain. The whispers hurt more than knives. She must have known. Gold digger. She chose him for his money, and now she's left with nothing. Sophia's stomach churned. This was not the life she had bargained for. She hadn't traded her youth and ambition to stand by a ruined man. She had envisioned yachts, magazine covers, charity galas, and diamond-studded futures. Not bankruptcy hearings and prison visits. "Alexander!" she hissed through gritted teeth, panic cracking her polished voice. "Tell me this isn't true. Tell me he's lying." Alexander's face was a twisted mask of desperation. "Of course not. Don't listen to her." But she had already seen the sweat on his brow, the tremor in his hands, the hollow look in his eyes. Sophia had seen men bluster before, and she knew the difference between confidence and collapse. Sophia took a sharp step back, her heels clicking against the marble. Gasps followed the movement. Alexander's head snapped toward her. "What are you doing? I'm not going down with you!" She snapped, her voice higher now, shaky, but clear enough for everyone to hear. "I didn't sign up to marry a criminal." The crowd erupted, some in shock, others with smug satisfaction. For the first time that night, it wasn't Isabella or Marcus who humiliated Alexander. It was the woman he had chosen instead of his wife. "Sophia!" Alexander snarled, his voice cracking. "Don't you dare walk away from me. You think you'll survive without me? You're nothing without my name." But Sophia had already pulled the diamond ring off her finger. She held it up for all to see, her face cold and distant. "Your name is worthless now." And with that, she dropped the ring to the marble floor. It hit with a loud click, echoing through the stunned silence. Alexander lunged for her, his face red with fury. "You ungrateful!" But security, sensing the shift in the room, stepped between them. Sophia turned, her gown sweeping behind her, her heels clicking like gunshots as she stormed out of the ballroom. Photographers scrambled after her, flashes capturing her betrayal for tomorrow's headlines. Alexander was left frozen, his chest heaving, his bride gone, his empire exposed, his dignity shattered in front of hundreds of people. Isabella watched it all, her children clinging to her hands. For years, she had carried the weight of Alexander's cruelty, the shame of being abandoned. But now, in front of everyone, the man who tried to erase her was being erased himself, piece by piece. And the knife that cut the deepest was not wielded by Isabella or Marcus. It was wielded by the woman he once believed would crown his triumph. Do you think Sophia will regret her actions? Tell me in the comments. The end, the ballroom had never been so silent. Sophia's footsteps had barely faded before every eye turned to Alexander, then to Isabella. She stood tall in her sapphire gown, her triplets clinging to her sides. The crowd waited, breathless, sensing the storm was not yet over. Alexander tried to regain control. He straightened his tuxedo, forcing a bitter laugh. "You're all fools," he spat. "You believe these lies? You believe a bitter ex-wife? You believe a meddling billionaire?" He pointed a finger at Marcus. "You're all blind. I built this empire. I did. And I won't let anyone tear it down." His voice cracked. Desperation was seeping in. But still, he continued. "You call me a criminal? Prove it. Where's the police? Where are the judges?" Before he could finish, the ballroom doors burst open. 2 uniformed officers walked in, their badges glinting under the chandeliers. Behind them came a grim-faced detective, his presence commanding immediate silence. Guests whispered in shock. Some clutched their pearl necklaces. Others held up their phones, eager to capture the unfolding story. Alexander's face went white. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice trembling. The detective stepped forward, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. His voice was calm, authoritative. "Alexander Vaughn, you are under investigation for embezzlement, wire fraud, and money laundering. We have a warrant for your arrest." Gasps erupted again, louder than before. Cameras flashed. Guests rushed to get a clear view. Alexander staggered back, shaking his head. No, but this isn't happening. It's a mistake. This is Sterling's doing." Marcus's eyes narrowed, his arms crossed. "No, Alexander. This is justice catching up with you." Alexander turned wildly to the crowd, looking for sympathy, allies, anyone who would defend him. But the same investors who once praised him now looked away. The politicians were discreetly slipping out the back doors. Even his closest friends turned their backs, not wanting to be tainted by association. "No!" Alexander shrieked, lashing out as the officers approached. Sophia, where is she? Sophia, help me! His voice broke into a pathetic cry. But Sophia was gone, and everyone knew it. The officers grabbed his arms, handcuffing him with swift precision. He struggled, thrashing, his confident facade shattered in a frenzy of denial. This isn't fair. I'm Alexander Vaughn. You can't do this to me. I made millions. I made history. The detective's voice cut through his panic. You made a mess, and now you'll answer for it. The crowd erupted in murmurs, some shaking their heads in disgust, others whispering that it was a long time coming. Isabella watched, her children clinging to her tightly. For years, she had prayed for justice, for the world to see Alexander's true face. And now, in front of the crystal chandeliers and the cameras, he was exposed, not as a triumphant groom, but as a criminal being dragged out of his own wedding in handcuffs. Alexander's eyes locked with Isabella's as the officers led him away. Hatred and fear burned in his gaze. This isn't over, he spat, his voice echoing as he was forced out the doors. You'll regret this, Isabella. Everyone will. But his threats sounded hollow, swallowed by the sound of the guests' murmurs and the click of the handcuffs. And as the doors closed behind him, the ballroom exhaled in a collective relief. Alexander Vaughn had walked into the night as a groom. He left as a prisoner. If you're passionate about stories with unexpected twists, don't forget to comment and share this video. A queen's reign. While Alexander was being dragged from the ballroom in handcuffs, Sophia was already halfway down the marble steps outside the Somerset Grand Hotel. Her heart hammered. Her heels clacked against the stone as photographers swarmed her. She tried to shield her face, but the flashes were relentless. Did Sophia know about the embezzlement? Is she leaving him on their wedding night? Was this all about money? Their voices pierced her composure. She had dreamed of this night as her crowning moment, the night she would ascend into the glittering world of wealth and power. Instead, she was running away in shame, her designer gown trailing on the pavement, her diamond ring abandoned on the ballroom floor. She ducked into a waiting car, slamming the door as cameras pounded against the glass. Her hands trembled as she dialed her phone, desperation consuming her. "Victor, answer," she hissed. Victor was her secret safety net, a wealthy investor she had been flirting with behind Alexander's back. If Alexander's empire collapsed, she was counting on Victor to pick her up. But when he finally answered, his tone was glacial. "Sophia, do you think I'm blind? Your name is already in every headline. Do you know what this scandal would do to me?" "Please, Victor, listen to me," she begged. "I had nothing to do with this. Alexander lied to me too. I'm free now. I can be with you." He cut her off with a bitter laugh. "Free? You're radioactive. No one wants to be near you. My reputation is worth more than your face." The line went dead. Sophia stared at the screen. Her stomach plummeted. One by one, she tried to call others. Friends, other models, wealthy acquaintances. But every call ended the same. Some didn't answer at all. Others dismissed her coldly. The doors that had once swung open for her with eager anticipation were now slamming shut. By the next morning, the tabloids had already dubbed her the Gold Digger Bride. Photos of her storming out of the hotel graced every front page. The headlines dripped with mockery. From diamonds to dust, Sophia abandons fiancé in scandal. The fashion brands she modeled for quietly dropped her. The influencer contracts vanished, and as if fate wasn't cruel enough, creditors began to circle. Sophia had lived a life of luxury she couldn't afford. Her credit cards were maxed out. Her designer wardrobe had been bought with borrowed money. Without Alexander's stolen millions to prop her up, her glamorous life crumbled overnight. Within weeks, she was forced to sell her gowns, her jewelry, even her car. Paparazzi photographed her in plain clothes, her hair undone, her makeup gone. an image the world devoured with relish. The same people who once praised her beauty now mocked her downfall. Alone in a dismal apartment, far from the glittering world she once coveted, Sophia looked at her reflection in a cracked mirror. The woman staring back was not a millionaire's radiant bride. She was just another cautionary tale. For the first time, she realized the truth. She had built her future on someone else's lies, and when those lies crumbled, so did she. Sophia thought she was stepping onto a throne. Instead, she had chained herself to a sinking ship. And now, with no wealth, no allies, and no love, she was left with nothing but the bitter taste of her own downfall. What do you think of the justice Sophia received? Tell me in your comments. The ultimate triumph. The ballroom was quieter now, though the weight of everything that had happened still hung in the air. Alexander was gone, dragged away in handcuffs. Sophia had stormed off to disgrace. What remained was the stunned silence of 100 witnesses, investors, politicians, socialites, all staring at Isabella Carson, the woman they once thought was nothing. Isabella stood in the center of it all, her triplets clinging to her gown, Marcus standing firm at her side. For years, she had carried her pain in silence. For years, she had cried in the dark so no one would see her. And now, under the glow of the crystal chandeliers, she felt a release so powerful it almost buckled her knees. Her children looked up at her with big, innocent eyes, sensing that something monumental had just shifted. One of her sons tugged on her hand. "Mama, are we safe now?" he whispered. Tears blurred Isabella's vision. She knelt, hugging them, kissing their soft hair. "Yes, my babies," she choked out, her voice cracking. "We're safe now. Mama kept her promise." The crowd, moved by the raw and genuine emotion of the moment, fell silent again. Some discreetly dabbed at their eyes. Others put a hand to their hearts, ashamed for having ever believed Alexander's lies about her. For Isabella, memories crashed like waves. Nights of rocking 3 babies to sleep while her stomach growled with hunger. Days of working until her fingers bled, praying she wouldn't collapse before her shift ended. The humiliation of being whispered about, judged, pitied. The pain of watching Alexander's success in magazines while she clipped coupons to survive. And yet, she had survived. More than that, she had endured. She rose slowly, her tears no longer a mark of shame, but of triumph. She looked out at the crowd, her voice steady. "For a long time, I believed I was weak, that I was nothing without him. But tonight, I'm here to tell you I was wrong. Strength is not measured by wealth or status. It's measured by what you survive. And I survived everything he tried to break me with." Applause erupted, hesitant at first, then swelling like a wave. The sound washed over her, a balm for the wounds that had festered for years. Isabella turned to Marcus, her eyes shining. "Why?" she whispered. "You helped me. You owed me nothing." Marcus's expression softened, his own pain flickering in his gaze. "Because I've seen what cruelty can do," he said quietly. "I watched it happen to my mother. I watched it take my wife. And when I saw you, Isabella, I couldn't stand by and let history repeat itself. You deserve more than just surviving. You deserve peace. And maybe, just maybe, I do too." Her chest tightened, not with pain this time, but with the fragile beginnings of hope. For so long, she had built walls around her heart. But Marcus's words tore them down, brick by brick. The applause continued, echoing through the grand hall like thunder. Isabella let it wash over her, not as validation from strangers, but as confirmation of a truth she already knew. She had endured the fire, and she had emerged stronger. For the first time in years, she felt lighter, as if the weight she had carried alone had finally been lifted. Isabella Carson, once discarded, once forgotten, was free. How would you describe Isabella's strength in one word? Leave it in the comments. The proposal. The applause still echoed in the ballroom, but it gradually softened into a reverent silence. All eyes turned to Marcus Sterling, who stood by Isabella's side like an anchor in a storm. His broad shoulders were straight, his expression softened, and yet there was a fire in his gaze that made even the wealthiest guests fall silent. Marcus stepped forward, gently taking the microphone from the lectern meant for wedding toasts. He turned to Isabella, and in that moment, the glittering crystal chandelier seemed to dim around them, leaving her as the only light in the room. "Tonight," Marcus began, his voice firm, yet full of emotion, "we all witnessed the truth. We saw a woman stand bravely against cruelty. We saw a mother protect her children with everything she had. Isabella Carson, you are more powerful than you know, and you are no longer alone." Isabella's eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat. She clutched her children's hands, unsure of what he was about to do. Marcus knelt to meet the triplets at their level. His gaze softened, his voice grew tender. "Children, I know I can never replace what was taken from you, but I promise you this. I will never abandon you. I will protect you, guide you, and love you as if you were my own." The crowd murmured, moved by the sincerity etched into every word. The triplets stared at him, wide-eyed. One of them whispered, "Really?" Marcus smiled, his lips trembling slightly with emotion. "Really?" Then he stood, turning to Isabella. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Gasps spread through the audience. Isabella's hand flew to her mouth as tears filled her eyes. "Isabella," Marcus said, his voice breaking for the first time, "I thought my heart had no more room for love. I had buried it with my wife, with the pain of losing my mother, with the shadows of betrayal. But then I saw you. I saw your strength, your pain, and your unwavering love for your children. And something inside of me healed. You reminded me that love isn't about perfection. It's about resilience, about never giving up." He got down on one knee. The room held its breath. "I don't want to just stand by your side tonight. I want to stand by your side for the rest of my life. Isabella Carson, will you marry me and let me be the father your children deserve?" The ballroom erupted in gasps, then into silence again, as every guest leaned forward, desperate to hear her answer. Isabella's tears were falling freely now, rolling down her cheeks. She had spent so long believing she wasn't worthy of love, that no one would ever choose her again. And yet, here he was, a man who had known pain, who understood loss, who saw her not as broken, but as whole. She knelt in front of him. Her children came closer, and she whispered through her tears, "Yes, yes, I will." The applause roared through the ballroom, louder than ever before. Guests rose to their feet, clapping, some wiping their eyes. The triplets squealed with joy, wrapping their small arms around Marcus. He laughed, hugging all of them, Isabella and the children. And for the first time in years, Isabella felt what she thought she had lost forever. The hope of a future filled not with fear, but with love. The wedding Alexander planned to showcase his triumph had been transformed into Isabella's rebirth. And this time, it was love, not cruelty, that stole the show. We hope you enjoyed this journey of strength and redemption. If you did, please leave a comment, like this story, and subscribe to our channel for more amazing content. What would you have done if you were in Isabella's shoes?